Hasita, what plans this year for your school break coming up?
Lots of plans as always, and particularly now that COVID is it a distant dream yet? I don't know. I'm trying not to find out.
Okay.
Yeah, several plans to all four corners of the country at this point in time. But do you have any recommendations?
Oh, I'm so happy that you asked. So I'm going to nudge you towards this little villa in Goa that some close friends of mine have set up. And honestly, it's because we've all gone there once already, and you can only go there once. And they're running out of guests. It's a new place. It's a lovely place, done up so beautifully, walking distance from the beach. But the marketing act is just not kicking in. The leads aren't coming in.
That's so strange, right? I mean, you have said that you've all been there once, and I'm sure you must be recommending it to people like you have just now. So, what's not working really? Like, I'm so curious. I mean, have they just exhausted the pool of people they know? Is that probably what it comes down to?
I think so, and hence what they have set up as some kind of a marketing plan. Maybe it's not kind of clear enough for the clutter that is Goa, I presume.
Yeah, that's true as well. Starting a marketing process and scaling a marketing process are two very, very different things. And a lot of us make this mistake, right? I'm sure we have as well at some point, wherein we think that the early wins are the real wins, right? The early traction is the kind of traction that we want to amplify. And our customers are basically replicas of the people that love us anyway. So why aren't they just coming in and doing what they're supposed to do? To answer that question, I think we need a guest, someone who knows exactly how to go from starting something to scaling something very, very well. And that's the marketing process. Welcome to the Damn Good Marketing Podcast. We're just one episode away from the season finale, and it feels so strange. So for this episode, we thought we'll let the episode and the guest do a little bit of the heavy lifting. And we have with us today Aniiket Sengar, Director of Marketing Ops at Digbi Health. Aniiket is a very good friend of mine. He ran his own agency for several years before being acquired and hired by Digbi Health to run their marketing process. And I'm sure he knows a lot more than we do about how to go from 1 to 10 to 100 and hopefully 1,000.
Welcome, Aniket. So nice to have you here on behalf of me and my friends in Goa with empty rooms in a villa.
Thanks, Hasita and Shubha. This is an amazing opportunity. I've seen how you built and grown this podcast, and I think I can learn a thing or two from you guys, to be honest.
That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Thank you, Aniket. So the first question we have for you today is actually, it's a bit of a personal choice versus what the market wants, because I think we all, have so much jargon in this industry on which we did an entire topic a while ago. But I think the most recent thing doing the rounds is product marketing. I'm sure nobody really understands what some of these terms will mean. But in your context, why marketing ops and why not product marketing? How do you see those two as being different? And how do you see your role in marketing ops as being different from what we understand to be product level marketing?
Right. So to sort of explain the difference between, traditional marketing, marketing ops, and product marketing, I usually cite this dairy farm analogy that I've honestly recently come up with, especially for this podcast. So, consider like a husband-wife farmer tag team that are running a dairy farm in a village. And let's assume that the husband is a traditional marketer. His role would be to figure out where the milk sells in nearby towns and cities. Figuring out who are the decision makers, whether they are homemakers or head of families, who determine how much milk and when is it going to be consumed. And he needs to figure out how to differentiate the milk that the business is producing from other milk farmers in the vicinity. And you have to price it right, depending on what kind of strategy you're sort of going for your product or your service, whether you want to lead with cost or if you want to lead with quality. So that's essentially the role of a traditional marketer. But a product manager, let's assume the wife is the product manager in this case, because she's pretty much the closest to the product. The wife would essentially build relationships with large consumers of the product or the service and try and figure out when, what quantity and which quality of milk do they like consuming, so that she can give the feedback to the product team or whoever's creating the product to better suit the product and the needs of the consumer.
Yeah.
Right. And in the meantime, while the product is being consumed, she has to ensure that the consumer doesn't become lactose intolerant or grow tired
Yeah,
of the
that's the
product.
big one. Yeah.
So you have to be really nuanced as a product marketer to understand the needs of the consumer and continuously give feedback to your product team on how to improve your product. Right. And what marketing ops does, let's assume the unsuspecting child labor here. And just to sort of as a disclaimer to listeners, no children were harmed during the making of this podcast.
Or this example.
Or this example for that matter. So marketing ops, a typical marketing ops guy in this scenario would set up records and ledgers for how much milk is being consumed by which customer, and what are the sales, when are the sales orders coming in, and also calculate the cost of promoting the product to the end user, whether it's setting up a kiosk or a pop-up store or printing out posters or whatever it is that may be that increases the visibility of the product in the market. And the marketing ops person would have to execute all marketing cadences and operations that have been defined in agreement with the marketing head, the product marketing guy, and the marketing ops team. So essentially, that's how, if you scale this example to a very modern business, this is essentially how marketing is handled across startups and even in bigger outfits.
Makes sense. So what I'm hearing you say is that none of these things are mutually exclusive. So it's not that you've hired one and you don't need the other. It's almost like a relay or tag team, you could say, wherein they're constantly tagging each other off and doing things. That's interesting, because I'd always thought that maybe it was one or the other. But that also brings me to the question of when your company is really small, and say the example of the folks at the villa, I'm sure it's a very small enterprise, potentially run by the family in this case. How do you go about assigning roles, or how do you identify that, okay, this is something that I can do and this is something where there's a gap area clearly? What process would you recommend in terms of, obviously some amount of soul searching for sure, but this is also a specific skill set that we're talking about.
Yeah, honestly, so the skill set that is common across all top performing marketing executives or product marketers, or even business founders for that matter, is creative problem solving. You need to be very, very creative when it comes to any business problems that are presented to you. That doesn't mean you have to paint a great picture or play 5 instruments. That's not the definition of creativity here. It's more about, you should be willing to spend a lot of hours in your day to reflect on a specific business problem, whether that's lack of sales, whether that's increase in operational cost, whatever it is that your business may be facing. You have to deeply research the problem, brainstorm with the people that you trust in the business to figure out how to solve it. So that's one thing that's common and that's needed across anyone who's striving to solve any marketing related problems. And the second would be data analysis. Whenever a business, is doing business with other customers, it generates a ton of data.
Yeah.
So you should be comfortable with analyzing all of that data, spotting patterns, and to cite a personal sort of anecdote, I failed most of my math classes when I was in school. But
that's all of us. Maybe not Subha. Subha was always the overachiever, but yes, that's true of the rest of us.
So for pretty much the 99% of people who are listening to the podcast, or so I'm assuming, there is a reluctance from people in the creative profession and in the marketing profession too sometimes to not give a lot of importance to accounting things, to the maths or the arithmetic or to the data behind it all. When you spend enough time with data, you do realize that it's just a tool. You don't need to know 5 statistical tools to analyze certain data. It's just a tool to figure out how you want to solve your problem. Then you spend enough time with it, anyone who's not even good at math or great at data analysis can eventually understand or spot patterns.
What's happening. Yeah.
Exactly. See, and this is the most critical skill out of all, is empathy towards what your customers want and what the stakeholders involved in your business want. I mean, most marketing gurus or people who spend time building a lot of brands tend to forget that they've not become these marketing gurus in isolation. They've always worked on projects and on the feedback, or they built brands on the feedback of other customers. So all the knowledge is essentially is never obtained in a silo. And when you switch brands or when you switch industries, you have to start at zero. So constantly listening to what the customer wants, which is a very important function of product marketing, will definitely help you succeed in whatever you choose to do in this field.
Aniket, as when you talk about data, it isn't always numbers, right? Like, for example, if I'm going back to my friend's villa because it's a big problem in my mind right now. Right now, the data may be quite skewed because everybody is from their network. So it might show that in terms of demographics, the people who are visiting are all between, let's say, 30 and 40, or they're predominantly women or whatever. But that so does that kind of data in the early days help, or is there a better way to go about it?
Oh, definitely. So honestly, and in any stage of the business, experimentation is key, right? The whole objective of building or scaling a business is that you're providing to the society something that it cannot produce by itself, or it isn't great at producing it, which is why the society rewards you with resources and money and time to do things that you really want with that business. So A/B testing is critical here. I mean, if you have these 2 or 3 key audiences that you know are working well for the business, then slot them aside and try and find out more through research or surveys or interviews. What do they specifically like about the villa? Why do they want to visit it? And what makes them do repeat visits or repeat purchases of whatever, a space or a product or service that you're trying to sell? And then never be closed off to sort of new customer funnels or audience sectors that you sort of can build in your business. It's best to, when you think of a marketing framework, it's best to have your core audience sort of slotted separately. And then emerging audiences or new audiences that you probably want to experiment with, run ads on, and figure out if they really resonate with your business, or if they're influencers in the whole buying decisions, or they actually making those decisions and you don't have the right kind of audience encircled. These are the kind of decisions that data can help you sort of arrive at.
Sure. And I love that you couple that with empathy, because I think that really goes a long way to creating a loyal customer, and then the referrals and the recommendations that hence follow from that, right? Hasita and I were away with some friends recently and at a place with a pool, and we just loved it that the caretaker said, hey, when you are going to use the pool, just give us a call so that we'll make sure nobody comes this side of the property, right?
Yeah.
Which I felt that one, they were in our shoes. They realized what we needed, and that probably came because somebody earlier gave that feedback and they've looped that into the process so effectively.
No, definitely. I mean, and especially in the case of a villa, I mean, you have 2 levels of services going on. One is, common problems that business has already solved. You've sort of brought them into the cadence, and now you're giving an elevated level of service just because of the fact that you've incorporated all that feedback. And then there's the other the culture part of the service, where you've trained your people to delight the customer at whatever customer touch point possible. And this is specifically very true with the Oberoi chain of hotels. They pretty much have the highest NPS score in the entire world when it comes to service. And that's because all their employees are trained to be extremely empathetic to the consumer, observe what they're doing, obviously be out of their way and not stop them, but ensure that, if they're at an Oberoi property, they get an experience that they never forget, which automatically ensures that they become your promoters and start telling 5 people in their circle that, I had an amazing experience at this specific property. So I think that's something that any business can learn from.
It's quite interesting. In fact, if we were to extrapolate the same example to the villa and Goa at this point in time, I think a lot of early feedback, again, because these are people who know them in a context that's outside of the villa and the villa as a product, it's going to be good, right? Like people may say, oh, it's amazing, or the flowers are this, or the trees are this, or it's right next to the sea, or whatever. But I think somewhere the uncomfortable questions also need to be asked in terms of, hey, if there was a 5% that was wrong with this, what was that? And sometimes that's tough because it is a villa which you've called home for so long, and now you've opened it up. But that's the only way to find out what is actually not working, maybe even for the people that know us and love us, and kind of build on that maybe to some extent so that we don't repeat that at scale. So this is a very marketer specific problem. We all have a savior complex. Right. We all think that we have to save the world on some level or the other, and we take it quite personally. I often take it to the point where I had a clinical diagnosis for anxiety. So that's how far things can potentially be taken. So in your context, Aniiket, in your work with Digbi, obviously it's a growing company and there are lots of things that are moving at any point in time. What are certain problems that you would consider yours to take charge and solve for? And what are certain problems which I wouldn't say avoid, but you'd see yourself as playing a secondary role, really? And it's not really something that you would want to get involved off the fly, because time is finite and you want to spend it in the right places.
Definitely. So to answer the first sort of part of that question, the savior complex is an incredibly useful skill. It's a It's a survivor tactic, and it should be directed inward versus outward. You have to save yourself first before you can go and save the world. So,
yeah.
And to sort of apply that in a very professional context is whatever you're working on, whether you're starting a business or you're in marketing or in accounting or finance or whatever, it has to be something that you love doing or something that you're deeply passionate about. In our life and times, the age that we live in, we have a lot of luxury to switch careers, find things that we love doing. So it's our moral imperative to find something that we really love doing and then work towards it. Because when you do that at a level, you'll be supercharged to solve the problems that sort of are encountered by the business that you're working on. Because then work doesn't stay work, it becomes play. So which is the sort of mindset you want to be in, in a job or where you're starting a business or scaling a brand. And specifically to Digbi Health, I entered Digbi Health with a vision to sort of overhaul the design of the entire brand, whether how it looks on LinkedIn or other social media, how does the website look, how does the UI function when somebody opens our app and sort of checks out our services. But I realized that once you sort of solve the design problems, then you get married into the business as well. You start solving some of the customer issues, some business problems, and then eventually you're at a point where you're also solving very core issues to the business, which is enrollment, revenue, cost, these things that are common across industries and all businesses. Every business wants to have the maximum number of customers possible, maximum profit possible, lowest cost possible. Eventually, when you sort of elevate yourself beyond solving the problems that you want to solve, you eventually encounter problems that are very critical to the business. And then you have to take a call on whether you want to be involved with all of these problems or some of these problems that you like solving. And that sort of defines the direction of, if you like to solve everything, then you will probably become the CEO, right? But if you only want to get into marketing, or if you only like to, figure out what the customer wants, then you probably stay in marketing. And then if you really like going, if you like opening the hood and seeing how the product functions, how is the service delivered, then you're probably going to transition to product, right? So it's eventually your own answers to yourself that define how you're going to grow in a role in marketing and what specifically you value, the problems that you value solving at work or for the business you're working for.
Makes sense. Yeah. And also you've spoken earlier about spending more of your time thinking and reflecting on what it stands at today in terms of a process or a function and what it could be. So, thinking again is a very abstract thing, right? Like I could think and there could be several different ways of doing that. I could be reading and thinking, or I could be watching something and thinking, but how do you build a culture of that? Because obviously today I'm sure you lead a team and there are people in the system who need to be trained to some extent in that way of doing things which are good for the system. So how do you then make a habit of some of these things which are more abstract?
Oh, absolutely. So to start with, when you're building or scaling a team, you have to do everything yourself or die trying. Because from my personal experience, if you're not aware of everything that is happening in your function, then, you really can't train or scale a team the way it should be. So to get really specific, how eventually I had scaled Digbi and how I brought in this culture of doing everything yourself. It's, there are 2 or 3 very core problems that somebody in marketing needs to solve. You want to invest in creating content that is liked by your audience. That's a very, very core function, as most businesses in the world are content companies. They are selling products and services, but at the core, they're content companies. So that's a problem you want to solve yourself. Also, deep thinking about who your audiences are, what do they specifically want, and continuously questioning your team to think about it as well. All marketing teams anywhere in the world get into this habit of doing things. It's very easy for marketing teams to accomplish 5 things in the day or in the week or in the quarter and not actually arrive at an outcome. So that's that's a cultural issue that you do need to solve in teams. And that can only happen when teams are constantly questioning themselves if they're making the life of the prospect or the consumer better. Are they contributing to more profits? Are they contributing to reduction of cost? So that sort of culture ensures that folks who are working with you eventually get mature enough to replace you. And then you obviously want to move on to more strategic problems. But even I remember in one of your episodes, you do need to think if you even need an app or a website for your business.
That's our favorite app.
Most consumers these days do not need a new website or a new app to log into. They'd rather, whatever new services or solutions you're trying to provide, they be integrated into the existing network of apps that they already use, right? Whether that's Facebook Messenger or that's WhatsApp, or on the business side, if that's Slack or Chrome extensions or Gmail widgets. There are so many products, especially in the SaaS area that I know that don't really, the website for them is just a place to inform users about the product. The actual delivery of service happens in one of these apps that users already are using. That's something that the team needs to think about as well.
So now that we know what to do, and to some extent I think what not to do, because I think there's also this temptation to invest in tools before investing in people and processes. Let me just buy the shiny new tool off the shelf and hope that it solves my problems. And this has happened with people buying software for everything. Like it could be an email subscription, it could be an ABM tool, right? It could be, and therefore it could be an expensive mistake as well. So just going back to the folks at the villa, let's kind of help them out a little bit. Now that you know that this is where you want to get started, and maybe these are certain things you should be paying attention to, where would you begin building and scaling a process?
Right. Again, so that question is answered mostly by this fact that there are no prescriptions, or you should not follow any prescriptions, anywhere, especially when you're starting a modern digital based business. You have to learn and experiment everything by yourself before you decide to buy software that solves your problem for you. In the end, all tools are run by people versus the other way around. So which is why you should be in a space where if you're trying to solve an existing problem, break it down into a micro experiment. Try and manually solve that issue first. In this case, let's say it's that repeat bookings aren't happening for that villa, or a specific audience category isn't responding to our marketing. Then build a small experiment and try and solve everything manually by emailing or running social media ads, or by doing account-based marketing very manually, till you arrive at a cadence that you can replicate in a tool, and then that tool can scale that solution for you. So only buy tools when you have a certain idea about how to solve your problem, because the tool can only scale a solution. It can't magically create a solution for you.
Yeah.
That's great insight. I think we very easily subscribe to tools, hoping that my dollars will convert into a solution. But that's great insight that it can take it up several notches, perhaps, when you have the clarity of what you want to do.
Oh, absolutely.
So then, Aniiket, what would be some stuff that we should think of buying as small businesses looking to scale?
Oh, absolutely. So for a small business, a CRM is critical, because a CRM is pretty much the center of your operation. So if you don't have that, then it'll be incrementally difficult to add more tools to your stack. So buying a CRM such as a Salesforce or a Zoho, depending on how much dollars are available with your business, is always a good idea. Then getting HubSpot for marketing automation is something that most businesses do when they want to scale their marketing. HubSpot is expensive, so if your CRM has inbuilt tools for marketing automation, then you should probably rely on those versus buying HubSpot. And if you're into account-based marketing, if you have a SaaS product, then LinkedIn Sales Navigator is definitely something you should start initially with. It helps you to discover new accounts and leads that you probably might not have looked at before. And to pair with that, you should definitely get ZoomInfo. It's slightly expensive, but then it completely expands your horizons into getting very contact-specific details into where somebody works at, what is their intent behind buying a specific product, which keywords are they searching for when they're looking for to solve the problems in their specific roles as a procurement person, right? And once you have this in place, you have a few account-based management campaigns going on, you have a few emails that have worked, maybe you have some deals closed, then you need a tool to replicate this, which is a sales enablement software such as SalesLoft or an Outreach that stacks onto your ZoomInfo and your Sales Navigator and your CRM as well. And obviously, if you have a B2C business, then Google Analytics is really important for you. Definitely get an agency to help you map all conversion events on your website or wherever it is that you're serving your customers. Then, you can get other tools such as a Hotjar to sort of get video recordings of how your customers interact with your website, a basic heat map of your website of where people are looking at on your website or where they're clicking. That gives you, insane insights into your customer behavior. And on the design end, I personally always use the Adobe Suite for all designers, which is a great tool because it gives you pretty much everything from image editing to video editing to audio editing capabilities. So your team is fairly well prepped when you have that.
Awesome.
Got it. Really useful. I mean, we've, I think, heard of some of these for sure, but quite a few new ones that I'm going to look into.
And also the larger context of how to apply each of these things has been answered to a large extent. Like we might have heard of a ZoomInfo, but how do you use it for your context is also equally important. And you've answered that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, a lot of these young upstart professionals come to me and want to know how to build a career into marketing ops or marketing for that matter. I just tell them that go and learn Salesforce and you're instantly employable the next day. Because if you know how to run a specific tool, I mean, half the marketers, in this world just want to direct strategic decisions. Nobody wants to actually go in and make 50 clicks and start a campaign. So if you know how to do that, then, nobody can stop you from getting a job in the next week. Yeah.
No, it was interesting. You said that most marketers want to do certain stuff and not do certain stuff, right? What's your mix like typically? Like, what's the mix you're happy with? How much of it is the strategy and the thinking, and how much of it is gone in the day-to-day execution, the actual doing? Because I know that when it's for us, when it's for our own business, while the lines do kind of merge to a large extent, there's this feeling that I'm spending too much time on marketing. Like there's a business to run or a business to think about, scale, grow. But how do you see it on the other side? Even as a marketer, you don't always want to be doing something, right?
No, definitely. So there are these certain core activities that you need to always be doing, even if you're wearing the marketing head cap and the CEO cap as well, especially in the terms of how modern contexts and services are consumed. You always want to be very, very close to your customers, even though while you're worrying about your top lines and bottom lines, you cannot lose track of where the industry is heading, what your customers or your prospects want from a product, right? And to continuously evolve the product that you're trying to build, right?
Yeah.
And the aspect of actually handling a business and its logistics and cost and all of that, that is something that a business cannot run without, which is why to handle a lot of that, you should hire and train people who can essentially, you can delegate all of that to a specific talent pool. And then only you'd want yourself to concern only with more strategic decisions in that matter, and avoid getting into the day-to-day and operations of something that you've already solved. I mean, we as people really like solving issues again and again that we've already solved, just because of the fact that we can solve it well, or we've already come up with a solution for it. As soon as you've come up with a sustainable solution for a problem in your business, try and hire someone and delegate that task completely, and retrain and review as you go along.
So basically know how to solve a problem to the extent that you then can delegate it, and
Absolutely.
not just get obsessed, I think, with the day-to-day. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that takes me back to, what do you want to do as an individual in your business? Do you like doing marketing? Do you like doing operations? Then restrict yourself to those kind of roles, spend more time. And this is honestly, when I define how you can achieve personal success apart from professional success, is 60% of your time, whatever you're spending on, should be done on activities that you love doing. That can be anything from marketing to ops to accounting, or whatever it is that excites you, or even creating content for your own business. So if you're not doing that, you're not really living, very content life as a professional. Initially, for the first couple of years when you're setting up your business, sure, you can wear multiple hats. But then after a point, you should evolve to be in a place that, where your business allows you to work on things that you love doing.
Makes sense.
And now it's time for the much awaited Topical.
So now it's time for a fun segment that we like to call Topical, inspired by a certain cat who I had to adopt and then give away, which is a sad story for another day. So Aniiket, we have a bit of a blooper reel rapid fire for you, inspired by another shitty show that we are watching right now. But what's the worst campaign idea that was ever conceptualized in the history of time in your mind?
When we talk about marketing bloopers, there's this one example I really like to go back to. So in 1981, American Airlines essentially launched this a separate product that allowed people to get free first class tickets for life. And
Wow.
They essentially aimed it at high performing executives who would be flying all around the world, doing meetings and all of that. In that product, you could get a lifetime worth of unlimited first class tickets for just $250K, which is a big amount in 1981. But where it sort of fell flat was regular rich people in the US started buying those tickets, and then not only high-powered executives. And to the point that, American Airlines was losing about $1 to $1.5 million on each $250K
Wow.
ticket that they sold. And, people are doing all kinds of fun stuff. There's this one guy who flew to London 16 times in a row.
Yeah,
because-
that person would have been me. I wasn't born then, but it would have been me.
And, a lot of philanthropic sort of acts also came out of it. There was this one guy, and, as part of that promotion, you could, apart from the 250K ticket, you could also get your buddy along for an additional 150K. So people would, get strangers onto flights and let them taste the good life whenever they were traveling. So you had this whole culture of people giving away free tickets to people who would want to experience flying first class. There was this one other guy who gave away all his tickets to AIDS and cancer patients so they could meet with their families without having to obviously worry about travel costs. So
Kind of sweet and disastrous at the same time. Yeah.
It is.
So the next one is, what's the worst headline you've ever seen?
So yeah, when I think of the worst headline in recent times, I think it was by Burger King. It's not technically a headline, but they started a series of 3 tweets, with the first tweet being "Women belong in the kitchen." Now,
Oh no.
yeah, that's never a good start.
Yeah.
So
And it all went south thereafter. So,
absolutely. So there, whatever marketing social media gurus in there posted that in irony, and then they wanted to introduce the philanthropic efforts that they were doing for their women staff, and starting a scholarship especially aimed at women employees of Burger King who wanted to pursue advanced education studies. But most of the social media only sort of centered on that one tweet, and they had to apologize for launching a multi-billion-dollar philanthropic campaign, which in itself is a big, a brand has to really be
work very hard to reverse the
Yeah.
crisis of their own creation.
Yeah, that's true.
And also tweets work in silos. Sometimes we forget that. Yeah. Yes. So that brings us to the end of Topic Al. So Aniket, what's next from here, and what's the company level goal that you're chasing now, and how are you going about doing that?
Honestly, for the company, it's all about creating this dent in the universe where we make chronic care accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
And we realized that the best way to go about it, and this is, we actually failed at doing B2C initially because we realized that the cost of the product was too high for an individual customer to pay. So, which is why we reached out to employers in the US and activated them about the importance of caring for your employees or building solutions for chronic health in your employee healthcare plans.
Yeah.
So that's the main goal we're chasing. And personally, I sort of came into Digbi Health to figure out the overall branding, the visuals of the company, and then got sidetracked while trying to solve the other marketing and other business problems. So now, since a team is in place where there are a lot of folks who work with me who are much smarter than I am at solving these specific problems of the business, I honestly would want to, or I do plan to go back to designing the UI and the UX that customers experience, the kind of visuals and the branding that the brand should aspire to be. Now that we're actually working with a lot of big companies like LG or Novo Nordisk, or for that matter, even Virgin Pulse. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Make the world a beautiful place, quite literally, I think. Yeah, and some of your logo work and design for Digbi is just amazing. So you're well on the way, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Aniket. It's really been wonderful hearing you and all of these marketing insights, which, I mean, there's quite a bit of homework for me to think about and things to try, and for my Villa friends, of course. But you've given us some direction, and that's very helpful.
Quite a lot to think about because this is actually one of those things that we don't think about when we start. There's a general euphoria about being successful, and usually early wins, sorry to say, but they're not that difficult to come by. But things get real about 6 months or a year down the line, and that's when I think having this kind of thinking and getting really objective about it is so important. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Damn Good Marketing Podcast. I think the key takeaway here for me is don't fake it till you make it. Just don't go there. It's not worth it. And I think it's worth spending that time to do something yourself, right down to the last detail, the adjective you want to use on a copy. It's okay. Like, just do it. And then once you know how to do it, you let someone better do it, So I think that's definitely my key takeaway for today. What's yours? We'd love to hear. As usual, our LinkedIn profile links are in the podcast show notes. And do go say hi to Aniket on LinkedIn as well. Thank you.